Welcome back to Intelligence, Real and Imagined from the Work AI Institute at Glean. This is the show where we sort through what's real, what's hype, and what actually works with AI at work. In today's episode, we're talking about AI and HR and why this moment feels different, not just bigger or faster, but more personal. Because HR isn't just adopting new tools. It's being asked to make judgment calls about people at scale and with technology that's still evolving. It's showing up in hiring, performance, pay, layoffs, learning, pretty much every decision that affects people's lives at work. Our guest today is Beth Steinberg. Beth has spent her career at the intersection of people, strategy, and change. She's led HR teams at places like Chime, Nike, Facebook, Nordstrom. She's led those organizations through growth, uncertainty, and the kind of organizational curveballs that don't come with a playbook. She's thoughtful, she's direct, and she doesn't flinch when the conversation gets uncomfortable. I'm also joined, as always, by my co-host Bob Sutton, professor emeritus at Stanford, best-selling author, and a longtime collaborator. Let's go ahead and dive in. So Beth, you've led so many HR teams and departments through various types of change over the years, economic changes, the pandemic. Does this feel different in terms of the change that we're experiencing right now around AI?
That's a great question. I think what feels different is so much of the unknown for people right now, and the rate of change is happening so fast. And I think with some of the other events that I have managed through, difficult events, like economic downturns, you sort of knew there would be an end, or history would have showed there was an end. And I think what is different this time is nobody knows what's really going to happen and what the evolution is going to bring, and I think how it's going to impact, their companies and perhaps their own jobs specifically. So I do think it's different.
Yep. And does HR feel that most acutely right now, or is it something that you're seeing across the board?
Yeah, I think I'm seeing it across the board. I would say many CEOs feel it, because I think if you're asked about it all the time. If you're a public company and you're not an AI company, you're being asked about it. It is so in the zeitgeist all the time. But I think in terms of, people and talent teams, I think they're thinking about it a lot, both in terms of what this means for their own talent base. Are they able to keep up with what is changing every day? Are they able to bring in the level of talent? Obviously, there's just a finite number of people who know about AI and can contribute. So I think there is a lot of pressure. I have seen a few examples that I think are great. I think like ServiceNow, Jackie Carney's, also the AI transformation officer. And so I do think people leaders can play a really pivotal role in this transformation.
So since I know you coach a lot of them, both people leaders and folks in other functions.
Yeah.
So when you're in that, what are they worried about? Like what when you have those sort of conversations?
Yeah.
What are they worried about? What advice do you give them?
Yeah, I think they're worried about, can we find the talent that we need, right? And can we keep up? Can we compete from a financial perspective? Because, especially if they're not an AI first company. Right. There are obviously, stories that are not true, but stories that are true about, the poaching that is going on around AI talent. So I think they're really worried about that and how to compete. I think they're worried about jobs going away. And how to deal with that. I think they're worried about how do we actually use AI as a tool for positive things within our own company, and who's going to lead that charge. And if it's them, are they actually qualified, or do they feel confident enough to lead that charge? So, what my advice is many people are feeling this way. And you're not alone in this, and this is a problem, or kind of an exciting time, and try to embrace it more than be afraid of it. Yeah, and try to figure out, in your department, how can you set the example of, how you can use AI tools in a way that is going to make impact to the business outcomes of the company. But I think it's difficult.
It's tough.
And you mentioned Jackie, and I think we're seeing
Yeah.
several examples of organizations vesting this AI transformation
Yes.
officer within the HR role.
Yes.
Would you recommend that? Or are there certain types of companies where that can be especially beneficial?
Well, I think I would recommend it depending on the company, the leaders, and the person in charge. I mean, I think because it is a transformation, obviously many people leaders are very used to dealing with change management and the changing workforce, and being creative about tools that can be used. So I think if a people leader is suited for that, I think it's a great way. I mean, I think if it's driven only from a technology perspective, it's difficult because you don't necessarily get the change management, or you don't necessarily understand the people implications of some of the decisions that are being made.
We're hearing all these rumors and true stories that roles are being eliminated, they're being merged.
Yeah.
What is it? Bots are managing people.
Yeah.
People are managing zillions.
Yeah.
So what are you seeing in actual changes in
Yeah.
the organizations that as opposed to the hype or the fear and hope about what will happen?
Yeah.
They seem so different.
They do. And I think the folklore is not what I'm seeing necessarily in reality. I mean, I think a couple of companies that tried to say we're going to let bots run everything. I think Lattice is an example, and it went horribly wrong, for Lattice. And I think they got a lot of pushback for it. What I do see though is things like, do we really need to hire interns? Do we really need to hire early talent? Can roles that, are doing a lot of day-to-day analysis, and can those roles go away? And I think the answer in some cases is roles can be evolved greatly, and I do think there will be skill sets that are becoming fairly obsolete over time. And I think I think that is sad and scary, and people are going to have to learn different ways. But what I am seeing from my colleagues that I talk a lot about this to, are they're using it for great productivity gains in the people world, and even in the recruiting world, right? Like automation of scheduling, like, it's a pain to schedule all those people.
Right.
Now, I think the caution to that is there is a connectivity that you want people to feel when you are trying to get them to come to your company. Right. So I think there's a balance there. So I don't think necessarily
like a bunch of interviews.
Yeah. You have I think people want a person and not just a bot. But I think in terms of like efficiency, I would much rather schedule something online than I would actually, go to a person. So you see that. I also think in terms of like analysis, I mean, I use it so much to analyze a million different things that used to take me hours and hours and hours. And
what would be an example?
An example is, hopefully this is not an example that the company's like, why are you doing that? But so I do a lot of assessments for people, and I do it for two reasons. One, for team to have sort of a common language of how they talk about things. Secondly, I think having some self-awareness and understanding is critically important at any level of the company. And so I'd never done this before, but I took this assessment that I did for a team. And usually I would go to the company and have them kind of, run it a bunch of different ways for me. I stuck it all through AI, every single profile. And I said, let me know where you think this team might have, concerns about working styles, where they're aligned, some ideas for the manager. What it spit out in literally like a 1 minute time period was absolutely brilliant. Yeah. Absolutely brilliant. It seemed exceedingly accurate.
Yep.
It was easy to read. It was easy to understand. It was actionable. Mm-hmm. So that is an example of something that would have taken me hours to do previously. I also think about like compensation analysis, which has always been hard, especially for small companies.
Right.
It's expensive.
Well, you've done it all.
Yeah.
You've had so many small companies.
I have, and it's expensive. The data's not always that relevant. You need a human, to do all this work with the compensation, surveys that you get. AI can do all of that for you. Now, I always tell people, you got to check it.
One of the topics that you and I are obsessed with,
Yeah.
Rebecca and I are talking about constantly, and as seems to be, I don't know whether it's a disease or a positive infection or whatever that's spreading through Silicon Valley at least, is this delayering thing.
Yeah.
And so what's your take on if that should be done, how that should be done?
Yeah.
Because we know lots of people who just middle managers are massively overloaded.
They are.
As a result.
Yeah. I think sometimes it should be done. And I think there was a massive amount of overhiring that has taken place in the last several years. It's always been my pet peeve as a people leader. Like, why are we hiring so many people? Like, it just doesn't make sense. And there's data that suggests, overhiring makes a negative impact to business outcomes.
And by the way, when you were in, I won't name the companies, in senior HR positions, first you had to argue against overhiring, lose, and then you also had to do the layoffs.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And lay them off.
Exactly. And I have the receipts for all of it. Like, so I've always been like, why are we hiring so many people? It doesn't make sense. So I do think there were companies that had too many layers and too few direct reports. They were trying to reward people by giving them leadership positions. But are you really leading a team if you're leading one person or two people? But they were doing it because it's easier to do that than to actually develop somebody or tell somebody, no, we're not promoting you. So I do think in some cases, some of the delayering was warranted, because I have experienced in some of my own companies, if you have too many layers and your spans are not broad enough, it causes a lack of velocity. I find in product development specifically, and I don't know that people really, until they really analyze that, figure out like what is the root of some of the issues of why is our product velocity so bad. It's look at your structure, right? And so I do think it's warranted in some cases. What I worry about when it's not, or I do think there's, to use one of your words, a disease sort of in Silicon Valley, that if one company does it, or if, you go to a conference and a prominent CEO is like, we're taking all the middle managers out. You go back to your company like, we're taking all the middle managers. It's not a one size fits all. So I think there's a real balance. And I do know right now there are many, many middle managers who are really struggling, or higher level managers who have nobody, beneath them. One manager I know, an engineering leader, had 22 direct reports.
Yep.
And people were wondering like why people weren't getting developed. I'm like, how is this person even coming to work every day? Like 22 direct reports, unless you're, Jensen who does it. I have so many theories about why it works for him, by the way.
Well, what give us one.
It's him. It's him.
Might be him.
It is him. There is something special that he has created inside that company. And I think he has, now, I don't know him. I don't really know many people that work here. But from a cultural perspective, from a kind of lack of tolerance for politics, a lack of tolerance for not being accountable for your work, I think that just must not exist in the same way.
Well, he says that when he gives people feedback on his
it's right there.
He gives it in front of everybody.
Yeah.
So why do I need one-on-ones? Yeah. Give you feedback, then we'll all learn together.
Exactly. So I think it's something very special that he has created. My guess is, I would say, don't try that at home, folks, because I just don't think it would work for very many people. And there's so much continuity too, because he's been in charge for such a long time. I wonder, if he were to, obviously at some point he's going to retire, and, could they recreate that again? My guess is probably it would be very difficult.
And the and I'd love to see the organizational chart, because he says there's not the same huge spans of control that there are below him.
I do think there are efficiency gains, but I also think there is no substitute for building a relationship with another human being to get the best out of that person and to get the best work and the best business outcome. So I think, it is, a fool's errand to say that AI is going to, change people management. Yes, it's going to change. I believe it can change the efficiency in which, we can write feedback or analyze compensation or look at some of these things in aggregate. I do think it can do that. I think there's better tools now with AI. I think there's a lot that can be done. People still want a human for the most part. And I would say engineers still want a human. I don't think it's just non-technical people. So that's then is still the burden on that person who has 14 direct reports. They still want a little piece of that person. And I do think we sort of underestimate the importance of human relationships at work.
Engagement surveys within HR have been around forever.
Yeah.
How do you evolve those, or do you, to start to tease out this new algorithmic AI piece?
Yeah. I think you have to ask some questions around it. Bob probably knows research on this that I don't. I think people either underuse surveys or overuse surveys, right?
That sounds right.
It is a data point. It is not the absolute truth. You still have to, kind of dig in. So, I think I would ask people questions around their use of AI, how they think it's, is it making your job easier, harder? Is it making the relationship with your team better, not better? And why? And then, once you get that first level of information, you have to dig, a little bit deeper. In terms of how I would use AI for a survey, is I would absolutely throw all that data into AI,
right.
Spit out and say hey, I know it says this, but what are the 5 smartest questions I should be asking people right now about what's working, what's not, based on this data, right? And again, this is an area where a human has gone through kind of painstakingly, trying to read the tea leaves, and perhaps they wouldn't. And I don't know, my guess is probably smart companies are asking people how they feel about it, but I don't, I think in some ways people are kind of scared to hear the answer about it, right? Because they know they're not that sophisticated. They know there's probably more they could do. So I don't know how many companies are actually asking questions.
One of the areas I think is interesting, and Rebecca's area of expertise much more than mine, is that, it's pretty useful for identifying bad meeting behavior, excessive talking, interruptions. And way, pre-AI, I used to use that stuff to give feedback to people, but that AI gives you much more precise data about such
Equal
behavior.
talk time.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah, I'm sure that's fascinating. And I know, I mean, many of the meetings that I'm in for a company that I do a lot of work for, I mean, we take notes through AI with
Right.
every single meeting, and we publish them. And I do think it has brought, again, efficiency. You
Right.
don't have to go to the meeting necessarily if you're an ancillary person, but you want to know what happened. And I think it's also bringing a lot more transparency about what's happened in the meeting that you can share. I hadn't thought about looking at, who's talking the most and is there biases but I think it's brilliant, and I'm sure, boy, I wish I would have had that in many companies that I've been in, and there would actually been a measurement and some, kind of positive or for improvement outcomes, based on it.
And speaking of measurement, what about performance reviews?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of applications for performance reviews. One company that I work closely with is actually looking at AI to kind of transform all of their people processes. And one of them being, performance feedback, both in kind of like, are they asking the right questions, being able to aggregate kind of performance output of employees, measuring bias and how they're evaluating people. And so I do think there are a lot of applications. I mean, I think Bob does as well, has pretty strong feelings about performance management systems.
And how bad almost a lot
Not,
of them are.
yeah. I mean, I think at best they're benign, at best. I think, they're rarely that helpful to people, and, they should be. I mean, I always talk to people about the reason you should do this is to help people succeed and help drive business outcomes. If you're not using it for that, then I don't know why you're wasting everybody's time. So I do think AI can completely transform performance management. Unfortunately, I think many CEOs don't understand performance management and use it as a tool to get rid of people.
Yeah. So that's the rap against performance people only use them because they don't have the courage to actually just fire someone. So
Correct.
That's why they get used.
So this organization that's rethinking HR processes with with AI, performance feedback. What are some of the other
headcount planning, just sort of resource planning. I mean, they're a company that's done very well, and so everybody wants 1 million, people all the time, and they're trying to think about how they build efficiencies into when they're hiring. From a skill set perspective, what are the competencies that they're oversubscribed, undersubscribed? I'm challenging them to look at what is your strategy 2 to 3 years out, working backwards and trying to figure out, okay, I'm going to need this competency in end of 2026. It's a really hard one. How do we start working on that now? That's always things I've told companies to do, but it's been very difficult to do. And so they're thinking about it for talent planning, all practically everything. I mean, they're certainly using it in the recruiting process, and I think they've hired someone specifically to be the person to build some of these things for them, and I think it's brilliant. I think they're a smart company, and they are clear-eyed about it, and so they know some may work, some may not, and we may have to iterate on these things, but it's a place to start. So I think it's really smart.
So you just said something about some may work and some may not, and this was from the all the interviews and stuff Rebecca and I did. Maybe the one that I thought was most interesting. It was also interesting that the guy isn't letting us use his name. So
Interesting. Okay.
But this guy argued that in his company, they assume that when they redesign a role or eliminate a role, that they assume that 80% of the time it won't work. And so what they do is they actually test it before they make the change in
How?
So what pilots, right?
With smaller
Interesting.
pilots where they,
That's smart.
and they get the people who will in theory be replaced by the technology to train the AI and look at the output of what happens.
And I think that's very smart. Have they made, have they found that
they've made a massive number of changes, but they don't make them until they have evidence.
I think that's great.
Because at least one of my complaints about what's happening with AI is there's all these theories about who we're going to get rid of and how we're going to redesign roles.
I agree.
And so we redesigned a bunch of jobs and fire a bunch of people, but we actually don't know whether it works or not.
My complaint about my own field has been forever. It's such a reactive field, and it doesn't have to be. And I think people wait for something to happen, then they clean it up, or instead of saying, okay, how can we align ourselves to the business and to the company's strategy in a way that we know that these things are likely going to happen. We're going to anticipate those things, and we're going to help drive those business outcomes instead of waiting for the aftermath of those things. And why it's so hard for people to do that, I'm not really sure. I'm not saying it's easy, but it makes your life a lot easier. It also makes the jobs of the people on your team much more fulfilling, right? Rather than being like, oh, blah, 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 screwed up again. I got to clean that up. You're like, okay, I anticipate that this is a new product that we're looking at. We don't have these people. How are we going to get ahead of this? How are we going to develop these people? How are we going to hire externally? How are we going to talk to the leaders about it? What should the org structure maybe look like and change because of that? That's interesting work, right?
Why is that so difficult?
I think a couple of reasons. Number one, I just don't think a lot of people leaders have learned that way. It takes courage. It takes some risk. Maybe you're going to have a little crow on your face. Maybe you're wrong. You also have to be deeply engaged with the outcomes of the business, and you have to have really deep relationships with people in the business, so these things. That's part of it. I think it's skill. I think it's lack of relationships inside the business. Maybe not really. There's a lot of companies that don't say to the HR person, your job is to drive business outcomes, right? I got called for a job the other day, and they were like, they want somebody who wants to drive business outcomes. So I'm like, do they really give me evidence of that? Why do they say that? And, they actually had some really good thinking about it. That is the exception, I think.
Yeah, well, you know this much better than I do, but there's lots of ways to figure out how powerful the head of HR in many companies are. And the difference between their pay and and other functions, where they sit, those things that really, and I bet you're really adept at figuring that out quickly.
Oh, you can figure it out quickly for sure. But I think for people who have leaders that have tried it, who, because I've been talking about this, I'm not the only one that talks about it. Lots of people talk about the reactive versus proactive. Once you get into that proactive mode, boy, your life is just a lot better and easier, right? I mean, and I just think it's a hard step to take, but there are some less experienced people leaders that I coach, and that is one thing that I tell them always, right? Get ahead of it, align yourself to the business, think about what are the processes, the tools. How do you learn about, if you don't know about AI, how are you going to learn about it, right? Sit in the meetings, right? So you can actually make those good recommendations about, technology, people, strategy that you may not feel like you should be making.
So a case you were making a minute or two on this theme is that when you're more strategic and proactive, the implication was that everybody inside and outside of HR will actually have more certainty about the future of their employment and maybe more confidence. But with AI, I'm thinking also related to this is there's all this fear.
There is.
About what's going to happen to my job, whether I'm a frontline employee, a middle manager. What, from not just the HR perspective, from the whole company perspective, what can you do to reduce the fear, and create psychological safety given the inevitable. I mean, it's objectively rational to be frightened.
Agreed.
But we have to all move ahead anyway.
We do. I mean, I think some of the things that I would do in any big change, be as transparent as you can. Try to get ahead of it. Can you develop people in different ways? Can you look and see, can these roles be eliminated, but can these, this skill set, or can you upskill them to take on another job? I mean, I think people are the most afraid when there's silence, right?
Yep.
Because they know something is coming, and they assume it's bad because they're not hearing anything about it. And, I believe that people can hear hard things.
Yep.
They can take it. It may not be easy, but if they feel like they're being deceived or lied to or information kept from them, it's almost irrecoverable. So I think leaders have to be brave right now and tell the truth. And, I also think there has to be a level of ownership from employees, that if you think you're in a job that's going to become obsolete, what are you going to do about it? Right? Are there ways that you can develop? Can you ask your manager, hey, can I go to this? Can I shadow somebody in a different role? Take some ownership and accountability for yourself and your job as well. But I think it's probably going on everywhere right now. Yeah. I mean, I think there's probably equal amount of excitement and fear right now.
What about early career hiring? We're hearing, to see it in the data.
Yeah.
Over and over.
I worry about it a lot because I think Brian Chesky just came out saying we still have got to hire. There's a lot of reasons to hire early career, and I totally agree. I mean, there's something that infuses the company when you bring in early talent, right? There's a freshness of thinking. There's, kind of fresh eyes on the culture. I believe in terms of levels, you really need to have a, kind of a distribution of levels inside your company, not too many lower levels, not too many higher levels. It gives people the ability to mentor people. So I worry that people may believe it's just a skill set and not more of something that infuses your culture. So I was glad that Brian came out and said that. I hope others do as well, but I do worry about it. I know one company that I know of just laid off one of their early talent people.
Well, that's good. That's happening.
Yeah.
Well, Beth, this has been fantastic. You're a wealth of knowledge, and I've learned a ton.
Thank you. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Bob. Thanks for having me.
You always there's a truth-telling quality to you that I don't get from.
I can't help myself
from all of your compatriots in similar roles. I always appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
What a great conversation. If you thought so too, subscribe so you never miss an episode. Thanks for spending your time with us, and we'll see you next time on Intelligence, Real and Imagined.